Are you involved in campus program, or is that? Has there been any intermingling with the Untitled Campus program and Professor Jeff Holly's IVCSD program?
Lots of conversations,
All right, everybody. Hi, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 6 o'clock, Tuesday, February 25th. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yes. Director Brent.
Here.
Director Geis. Here. Director Bertrand. Here. Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Hedges. Director Nguyen.
Here.
Director Thurlow.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. We'll move to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items they'd like to pull? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Thurlow. Any public comment? Any further board discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0 with one absence. All right, I'm going to open up the public comment period. This is the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Anyone have any requests to speak? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period. We will make a note that Father John has arrived at 6:02. We're going to go to discussion items. I'm going to start with 4.3, which is the community garden update and request. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan to introduce that item.
Cool. So it's been a year since we allocated the money for the community garden grant. It looks like it's been a pretty good success based on what the presentation you'll get shows, and just observing that space change and develop over the last year now. And so Whitner and Katie are going to do a presentation of what the funds were used for and what got accomplished with our grant, with the financial summary as well, and then they have a request of the board through June 30th. So get this plugged in.
Awesome.
You can start off.
Okay. So, y'all, my name is Whitner, and so for the past year, and actually the fall of 2019, we started the garden, and under the guidance of Katie from UCSB Sustainability, and my position is through the UC Global Food Initiative. So basically, students do different projects. Students will propose a project. If it gets approved, they get a staff advisor, mine is Katie, to just kind of help them see that through to fruition throughout the year. So that's what I did up through the end of the school year, like last year, and then got reapproved for the same program, like for this year as well. And then on top of that, we have Selenia, our outreach coordinator, who helps with the garden. And then, yeah, if anyone else that's here for the garden wants to stand up, I think it might just be Katie and Selenia right now. And say hi. Hello. Awesome. And then obviously the Methodist Church as well. And then I think a couple of folks from the Methodist Church might be coming by tonight as well, but they might be running a little late. But yeah, it looks like we've got the presentation up. So like I said, UCGFI, I don't know how well people can see this, but that's Global Food Initiative, Edible Campus Program, the University United Methodist Church of IV, and IV Community Services District. So kind of our main partners on this project. You can go to the next one. So in this presentation, I'm just going to give like overview of the past year, community engagement, everything you see here, partnerships, how we spent the money, and then coming up on this grant extension through June. Yep. So basically, just kind of starting with what the garden is. So main goals are just grow a substantial amount of food in this space, which wasn't previously used, create a kind of space for the community. And then on top of that, we do a lot of educational workshops, partnering with health and wellness from UCSD, or just doing them independently with like Edible Campus program. And on top of that, we have hosted a couple different community events. And we also provide a community compost service in partnership with IV Compost Collective. So we've been running that since last fall as well. So yeah. So this is what the space looked like before the garden. And we'll get a couple more photos of that earlier on, but we can just keep clicking through. Earlier development, as you can see on the corner, it's just straight sand here. So it's just like chest-high weeds in the spring, and then at the end of summer, it's all sand. And then with our kind of really strong winds that blow south here, it just all kind of creates like a dust bowl in the neighborhood. But not anymore, so we can keep going. Yeah. So this is kind of as the garden was like expanding and pushing down, down towards the Camino del Sur side of the street, and keep going. And this is what the garden looks like today. This was a few days ago. So yeah, we've kind of started over here, kind of pushed down to the corner, and now we're kind of fully wrapped around this side of the building as well, and trying to get like as much of the space under production as possible. And, this is like at the end of last summer. It got kind of chaotic with all the watermelon and squash and tomatoes and all the kind of fun stuff we were growing. And this is our community compost bin. So we have like a little sign with some guidelines. So yeah, IV Compost Collective would drop off here, and then any community members can come and do it as well. And this is one of our community members dropping off some compost. And then yesterday I actually had a girl come by and ask me for some finished compost for her own home garden. So people do that every once in a while, and like we help them with their own personal projects too. This is our pizza oven on the left. So you'll see that was one of our original line items in our original IVCSD budget, so that's pretty exciting. And this was like an open oven we built out of, it's like 70% clay subsoil, 30% sand, and then straw. So it's called cob. You mix that all together with your feet in a big pile on the ground. It's a lot of fun. And then get a bunch of friends together and pile up a big oven. And we've done a community pizza party in that, and we had like over 80 people come out and make their own pizzas and cook them in the oven, music and whatnot. Speaking of, this is a couple days ago, two of my friends stopped by, and that's Clyde, one of the guys who sleeps on the property, but he's always just playing music and hanging out in the garden and whatnot. So on to more community engagement stuff. So this is kind of all the ways that we engage the community. So structured work days every Sunday after service. We do a volunteer day at 12:30. Like I said, like scheduled workshops, how to make kimchi, how to make sourdough, how to start your own garden, different things, composting workshops, the list goes on. We've had a couple different class visits. Dr. Bridget Lewin's class has visited twice. They just brought by 60 students like a couple weeks ago. We also had an art class from UCSB come by, and some of the students were just talking about like, would they want to take on some sort of project of their own in the space, some sort of art project. And then also kind of more just passive ways that we engage with the community, just having that space exist and be open. People can come and go as they please. And just having that resource there for the community. And as I said, composting. And then the food, of course. So food goes to volunteers. Food Not Bombs we've donated to pretty consistently. Jeremy with Food Not Bombs is a congregant, so he helps out with that. And then congregants as well during their community meals. I'll just click over to the next one. Yep. So these are just some metrics on our engagement since last March. 17 workshops, we've had 2 class visits, 2 community events, over 50 volunteer days. Those are our weekly ones, and then we partner with this program called Saturday Morning Live, which comes by a couple times a quarter, and that's the Edible Campus program. And then these composting metrics, so 5,500 pounds composted just from IV Compost Collective. And then estimation, just kind of based on like visual, what the community is dropping off, like in comparison to what they give us. And I'd say that's like about 7,000. That's probably like pretty conservative estimate, but you know, best we can do. And then, yeah, partnerships, so keep going on. And I think I've mostly touched on these. I will mention, yeah, St. George's Youth Center, that's perfect. So a group from St. George's has come by several times, like this year and last year, a little bit. These are some guys shelling some corn. We got this like heirloom corn species from my friend Judy. She helped start a community garden called Trinity Gardens in Santa Barbara. So the heirloom corn was passed on to her, and then she gave it to us. So it's pretty exciting. And then these kids got to just like feel the corn and unwrap it, and they're all different colors, so they were stoked. And then they planted this wheat, which is also an heirloom variety I got from Judy as well. So it kind of has like a lot of cool historical aspects to it. And they planted the wheat, and then once it's fully mature, they're gonna harvest it, make it into flour, and then hopefully bake something with it in the oven. So that's the ultimate goal, to kind of like get them involved with the garden a little bit. And then they got to like throw the seeds and stuff, so they were excited about that. Yeah, and then we can go on. Yep, so this is our How to Make Sourdough. There were like over 50 people that came out. It was like probably the biggest workshop that we've hosted. And probably like 20% of those are permanent residents, and then a good mix of students as well. So, yep, we can keep clicking through that. And then this is Saturday Morning Live, a group coming out on a Saturday through our partnership with Edible Campus Program. Dr. Bridget Lewin's class, as I mentioned, this was from last year. Her class came and took a visit while we were kind of developing the space. And we can move on to the next one. Ivy Compost Collective, like I already said. I think that might be the man himself in that picture. Awesome. And then, and then what we're all here to hear about, how we spend the money. So let's see. If you guys want to follow along on your spreadsheets and get more detail too. Yeah, so you can see the breakdown here. I don't really have much to add on to it. Outreach position, infrastructure, seeds and starts are kind of the three main things that we spend money on. And then of the $11,090 for that original grant, we still have $2,870 left, which if you go to the next slide. So, yep, proposed extension. So just running off that $2,870, we can just run through June. And then I think we'll come to y'all in June with a proposal to potentially get on your kind of June to June funding cycle, apparently. But that's a conversation for further down the line. But yeah, as for this grant extension, it's pretty much just business as usual. The only two additions, which you can see on your papers there, if anyone else wants to follow along, there's some papers on the desk at front. But put in a line item for additional garden help. So that's $14 an hour, average of 5 hours a week. And that's just for community members who are already doing really kind of like intense projects in the garden, or are really enthused, and kind of like compensate them for their work, and potentially do some projects we don't even know about yet. Yeah, outreach position, seeds, tools, other. Also, another side note, this actually might be slightly out of date compared to these ones. I might have missed something. Yeah, so one other thing I added in was for community events. So that would be under the seeds, tools, other. So with community events, just allocating some of that money towards like food for doing more of these events and stuff like that, just through the end of June. Yeah, and over the next slide, I think that might be.
Are there any more slides? No.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, here you go.
Well, thank you, Whit, for that excellent presentation. It's really awesome to see the great work that you have been able to do in this garden, taking a space that, as you say, wasn't really being utilized for much at all, just it's, land that happens to be around the church, and turning it into what it's become today. It's been amazing to see the transformation, and I think you have a lot to be proud of. It's really great to hear about some of these programs that you've got going on to educate the community, especially our youngest generations, to get them thinking about farm to table and producing their food themselves rather than just going to the store. So I think you have a lot to be proud of. I want to open it up for questions from the board, and I see Ethan has your hand up.
Yeah, congratulations on your success in this first year. It's really amazing to see how many people you've reached. This has been an awesome project in placemaking. I mean, that's a corner that many people travel by, and you've activated it in a beautiful way and to really advance the education of our community and provide a great service. So great job on that. We are going to be starting our budget process for the next year probably in these next 2 months. So we'll definitely want to connect with you as soon as we do that, so that when it gets to June, we're ready. Just because I know we'll have a lot of those decisions already made by then. So definitely encourage you to come to that. Thank you so much for this.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Do you guys use a lot of water?
A lot of water?
Yeah. What is your source of water?
Yeah, basically, so right now, our source of water is just like the line that comes into the church. Like, we just hook up to the backflow from, that was going into the building. There's like, one thing that we really would be interested in is because there's so much surface area on the roof of the church, like doing some sort of gray water collection. The only thing that's kind of held us back on that is with the expense of like buying some sort of a cistern, and then with like, since the building is currently condemned, with kind of like the uncertainty of that in the future, like tossing that investment. But yeah, right now we kind of just go off the water meter. And if we, and you can't see it in this photo, but along this side of the building, I've just been watering like by hand, maybe like once a week. During the winter, you really don't have to do much watering at all. Even just like kind of, it gets like cool and wet during the night, and that's enough for like most of the plants. But yeah, we do have everything on like regular like drip irrigation, yeah.
Do they have like collectors that you could get off the roof? Because they do have water cans up at the transfer station that people take their gutters and put them into those big cans. So I don't know if they commercially would give you some.
Yeah, okay, well that's something, yeah. That's
Just
something
another
we
way to
definitely
get
look
people
into.
water from.
Yeah, makes sense.
But you guys pay the church for the water, or the church pays for the water?
The church pays for the water.
The church pays for the water.
George?
So what is it, I was unaware that that church had been condemned. What's the situation there?
Yeah, so, maybe,
Do you wanna ask John?
yeah, if John, would you know anything about that? Don't wanna call you out, but,
I didn't hear the question.
yep, oh,
You got
George
one
asked.
person here.
John, the
George.
question was about the status of the church building. Could you speak at all about the status of the church building?
We really don't know. We have an engineering study which has indicated that it may not be structurally sound. And that is an ongoing matter that our local congregation is dealing with, as well as the regional Methodist body for Southern California, because we have to coordinate with them in what's going to happen there. But we are delighted to have this space being used in such a constructive way, and it's a wonderful thing that we can cooperate with the community service district and make this something that's available to the community rather than just an empty lot that was blowing dust toward the people that were downwind. This is much better.
Will you express our appreciation to your congregation for this?
I'll do that. I'm the church treasurer, and I'm the one that pays the bill, so I
Okay, thank you.
we pay the water bill, and we're happy to make that contribution.
Yeah.
We have revenue sources
Thank
that
you.
we can use, and Whit may have said, but the regional body for Southern California of the Methodist Church also gave a grant of $5,000. So some of the purposes that Whit may have, and that Katie, we can use some of that money to supplement what you all have approved. So it
Perfect.
works very well
Perfect.
in coordination that way.
So if I may, with a follow-up. So this is a beautiful one-off of something that obviously we would like to see replicated throughout the community.
Okay.
So one of the things you might think about when you come back is to try and show us how do we replicate it. Is it going to be $10,000 a venue to do that? But I think clearly what we want to do is to have this be a model for everywhere else in the community.
Okay.
But I'm not sure we can pay $11,000 a year in perpetuity to make that happen. So maybe you can help us figure that out.
Yeah. The Edible Campus program would be happy to work with Methodist Garden and our other partners to do that. We currently also work at the St. Michael's University Church Garden and collaborate with Greenhouse and Garden Project and the Student Farm as well. So we're well positioned to help with that request.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
I do have one question for our staff. So this is a request to extend and roll over the money that's already there, sitting in their accounts.
They've got money right
They've got the money already. So then my question for you, Whit and Katie, is the outreach coordinator, and because you mentioned the additional hourly help, that's a new thing, right? That's you guys haven't paid community members to do work in the garden yet.
Yeah.
Okay, and the outreach coordinator position, is that also a new thing?
No. So
Okay.
that's that's the first line item in the original thing. Yeah, top left corner of the spreadsheet there. But that was budgeted
Okay.
for in the original grant.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I'll move approval of the expenditure through June 30th.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Thurlow, seconded by Bertrand to approve the extension. Is there any public comment on this item? Any further board discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you for all of your hard work, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what you're able to continue doing, and looking forward to the budget process and working with you. This has been a really strong partnership, and I've just been really excited. Ethan mentioned that a lot of people walk by that every day. I count myself one of them, so it always brings me joy to be able to see the usage of the garden and how it's transformed. So thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You may want to note that there's some flowers planted there, if you haven't noticed, for flowers, there's bee-friendly flowers planted.
Excellent, thank you for that, and I'll have to go check that out. Okay, with that, I think we're gonna move on to the next item. I'm going to jump back to item 4.2, which is the Isla Vista Compost Collective update. We have folks from the Isla Vista Compost Collective here today. I just want to update the board. We bring very good news, which is that yesterday at the Associated Students Isla Vista Community Relations Committee meeting, they allocated over $40,000 to the Compost Collective for its operations potentially next year, which is a really big win, and really just want to give all the credit to the work that the Compost Collective has done to prove that they are serious about continuing this program, and a big ups to the Community Relations Committee for putting their weight behind that. So I want to just hand it over to Jacob to talk a little bit about that and what they'd like to see moving forward.
Yeah, well, hi everyone, it's great to be back again. I think all I really have to say about that is I just wanted to kind of touch a little bit about the process of how that worked. Over the past month, we've been going back and forth with the Isla Vista Community Relations Committee about our funding request, and as of last night, we finally came to an agreement for them to pledge to fund the operations of the Compost Collective for an entire year. So based off of that, I do have a request for tonight. So we as the Compost Collective, as I mentioned, have officially received a pledge to fund our operations. So we would like to ask the board to begin a proposal for the absorption of the Compost Collective under the CSD. And we would like to ask for the proposal to be presented and voted upon hopefully at the March 10th board meeting. So that's my request for the night. Any questions?
Excellent. Any board members have any questions? Jay?
I would like to potentially understand some of the constraints on the timing, because you really want it to be March 10th. I'm wondering what's going on. So
Okay, well, one, we haven't been in operation for about, I think, four months now, so we're very eager to hopefully get back up and running. Two, the the next board meeting after the March 10th board meeting is during spring break. So that I think that might be a problem for potentially your board, and then potentially a problem for our members being here for that meeting. And yeah, I mean, biggest thing for us is we're very eager to hopefully resume operation in the community, and also spring quarter is coming up, and we preferably could be in operation for as much of spring quarter as possible. We're hoping we could like finish off the year with the bang and kind of have everyone remember us as a program that like came back and all that. Yeah.
Jay, go ahead.
Does staff feel that that's possible? With relation to getting together an MOU or whatever we required would do?
Maybe, I mean, I don't know if we'll need like an MOU because it'll become like our program.
Okay.
Again, we're
I was just
doing
going
some-
based upon some of the wording that
But
we used in the previous
yeah,
meetings.
yeah, it's gonna be hard. I mean, if you all approve doing that on the 10th, then there's the whole phase of getting the employees onboarded and figuring out how it's all gonna actually work under us, and just getting employees organized and get started and, you know, schedule
A
set.
real staffing plan.
So that's gonna, I mean, thankfully, we don't have to, there are a pool of employees. I mean, we have to still do an open process to apply for jobs because these are government positions and we can't just guarantee them just to the people who already have held the positions. And the one thing Spencer and I have talked about, I don't know if Spencer and Jacob have mentioned this, but I mentioned this at the last board meeting, but I'd like to see us move towards more like a part-time, single person being a program manager rather than like 5 program managers essentially, because just thinking of how to manage that with just Deborah and I, it's hard to just double the people we're managing or triple it in overnight. So it's tough. It's not, I think we can get a proposal on the 10th, and implementing it by April 1st will be difficult.
Are there things that, so the proposal though by the 10th does seem feasible?
Yeah, I mean, the proposal's gonna tell you, like, we should hire 5 dirt riders and we should hire a program manager and it'll cost this much and we have the revenue for it. So it's relatively simple.
That was really the thing I was keying in on, is the idea if something would have to be approved on the 10th, the idea that you actually feel would be comfortable getting us the thing that we would have to
Yeah.
approve by the 10th.
Yeah,
whenever we
they've
actually-
already put together a lot of the information. You know, they have the budget, the structure, and that's what we've worked on already. So that's already, it's ready to review, and, you know, IVRC has funded it, but it's the implementation that's not as easy as, you know, voting. Yeah.
The implementation's the thing that we can start on once we get.
Once we vote, yeah,
so.
yeah.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Any other questions from the board? I'll just say that it's really awesome to see a funding pledge and secured in a relatively quickly amount of time. I think that you and the collective deserve a lot of credit for being able to move quickly and get that revenue locked down. And I am a big supporter of us moving forward and directing staff to bring forward a proposal at a future meeting that includes these things, so that we can get the compost collective going again. We saw on the last presentation that just in one garden, over 5,500 pounds of compost accounts for almost the majority of the compost that is there. And so there is desire in the community for this, and I think that this is a real opportunity for our board to step up and help them find a new home, really sponsor a grassroots initiative in the community. Ethan.
Thank you. And yeah, congratulations on everything you've done. It's been really impressive to see how many folks you've reached in the community. Just the list of all the organizations and groups that you went to when you found yourself in this situation of having to reimagine how you do business. So it's been really remarkable to follow just everything you've done with that. One question I have for staff is, have we been in touch with the CRC to discuss when funding would be transferred over?
Yeah, we have an email from them of like what they need from us, but since they've approved it, getting the check is less of a problem.
Okay.
Since we have cash to float this.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
But we'll get the cash soon.
Well, with that, I would, go ahead, Bob.
The only thoughts I have on that is, you know, by us taking on new employees, there is a lot to that process that's kind of hidden, you know? It's back to, you know, retirement plans, health insurance plans, insurances, workers' compensation, all that kind of stuff, which is like gory details. It's the whole problem of the state saying, hey, you gotta make these people employees. So it could take a little bit more work by these guys and probably maybe even the policy committee to say, okay, when we take on this class of employees, and I don't mean that different kind of class, but part-time or however we're gonna have them, that's some tricky business with long-term ramifications. You know, if the program goes away, how do you lay people off? If, you know, that's just some of the stuff we have to think about. That's a little bit more, it was hard to get these guys onto a retirement system. We still haven't solved probably all the health insurance because we don't have regular employees. So we have some challenges there on becoming an employer. So it's just work.
It's not gonna be simple.
But it's not,
gonna be simple, yeah.
So, and don't rush it.
That's what, yeah, I won't.
Even if we outline a staffing program, we still have to find the staff to do the work. So, that's a consideration.
I think that all of those things are very well taken, that we want to make sure that implementing this, we do it in a way that is both sustainable for the program in the long term and make sure that we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and doing it in a way consistent with our policies. And so I understand the strong desire to want to get going as soon as possible. I certainly would want to if I was in your position, and if I was a member of the community who wanted to get my composting back going. But it is true that we need to make sure that we do our due diligence in that. So I'm very supportive of us directing staff to begin designing that proposal and then bringing it back to the board for approval at a later date. I'll open up public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
Is the park district gonna use any of the compost? And the park district, of course, has, or had, a casual labor pool, which may get around some of Bob's questions, if you deal with the park district on that issue.
So we actually made a proposal to the park district in the fall before we stopped our operations regarding setting up a compost pile at Estero Park, which is their park. I don't know if that would still be possible if we were absorbed by the CSD, but that's something we've looked into before, and that's something the park district was excited about setting up.
Excellent, very cool. Any other requests to speak on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. I think, Jonathan, you had something you were gonna...
No, I was gonna say, who had the first and the second? Did you make the motion?
I don't think it's been a motion made, but I'm happy to
you
make
just
the
said,
motion.
okay,
Yeah.
you said it.
I try not to make the motions, but I'm very happy to move that we direct staff to bring us back a proposal for an Isla Vista Compost Collective program under the CSD's banner.
And I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion made by Brent and seconded by Nguyen. Any public comment? Any further board discussion? All right, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you for all the work that you've done, and we look forward to this next chapter of bringing everything together.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We're going to move back in the agenda to item 4.1, which is Resolution 20-5, commemorating 50 years of community building in Isla Vista. Really happy that we've brought this item forward to acknowledge that there has been an entire half century since a lot of the efforts to make Isla Vista into the place that it is today first got going. And a lot of that does trace back to something that happened 50 years ago today, the burning of the Bank of America. I really think that the story of the burning of the bank is a great example of how out of tragedy and unrest, out of the concrete, if you will, a rose can grow. And that rose really was the Isla Vista community and the efforts for local governments and the local governance and the ability for the people who live here to be able to make the decisions about what kind of community we want to live in. And so I'm really happy that we've brought this resolution forward. And I just want to use this time to acknowledge all of the work that has been done over the past half century to get us to where we have been today. I really feel every day that as a community services district, we are doing our best to fulfill that legacy of improving Isla Vista and what Isla Vista historian Carmen Lodis will call the Isla Vista adventure, which is this idea that we can come together and build the community that we want, irrespective and institutions and constraints be damned. We're just in it with our idealism, and we're actually building things that are new institutions. So I'm really excited that we can acknowledge this. Any other comments from the board?
Isla Vista for the people, yes.
Short and succinct, I like that.
Motion.
Any public comment from members? Dave?
Yeah, I hope you won't mind if I take a minute or two. You're meeting in my office. And I sometimes get credit for starting the Isla Vista Open Door Clinic. I don't take credit for that. That was started by the community. Hundreds of people wanted it. We had a landlord that volunteered or donated sinks to the place. The unions came in and did some renovation work. And obviously it's what I'm most familiar with, but this building, the Community Service Center, was really important and really central. What's exciting to me is to see the energy and enthusiasm that you have and see the organization that you have. It's always been my view that Isla Vista has been treated like a poor stepchild by the county, by the university, and by LAFCO. And I have been publicly critical of that. Of course, it hasn't gotten me anywhere, but you have gotten somewhere by having this government in place. And I encourage you to keep pushing because it's exciting just to sit here and hear about community gardens and to hear about composting. And I hope that you have the same opportunity to come back here and sit here 50 years from now and reflect on your accomplishments, because you're making a lot of accomplishments. I want to put in a plea to have a commemorative event or events this summer or this fall. I know that I've talked to Jonathan and we've talked to the people at the neighborhood clinics, and they're willing to cooperate in whatever kind of event comes off, and I hope there is something. You know, you have a group of people that were here, they even preceded me. I know it's hard to believe anybody would be that old, but that have had an Isla Vista reunion whenever they felt like it, usually on a 5-year or 10-year basis. And I think that working with those people is something that is worthwhile. You know, I mean, people that started this, we weren't all saints, but I think we were all idealists. And I think that you are all idealists. And God knows this is a time when we need idealism and we need to put idealism to work. The other thing I guess I was going to say, in addition to the volunteers that we had volunteers at the clinic, we had volunteers in the community, is that this has been the birthplace of some interesting organizations. Kinko started here. The Pacifica Institute started here, and I'm sure there are many more that I'm unaware of. One last thing is that you may not be aware that you are not the first people to honor the Chumash in this building, because for years, the Isla Vista Clinic had Chumash symbols up on the second floor balcony there, and I would encourage you to do the same. Thank you for indulging me, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I heartily support this resolution.
Thank you so much, Dr. Day. Go to Art.
In addition to idealism, there's been a somewhat, there's been an amount of drollery. A person whose name I won't mention once ran for office in the sanitary district as, "I'm number one in the number two business."
Indeed.
It's a good one. We're gonna have to get those buttons embroidered.
And by the way, the KCSB has copies of the big bright orange burning the bank poster, which they're using for a fundraiser during their current 10-day fundraiser.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Just was made aware of that, and I'm thinking I'm gonna have to try and get one of those. Those are cool posters. I'll bring it back to the board. Any other board discussion, Father John?
I found it somehow sweetly fitting that we were talking about compost before this. You know, compost is that which much of the society deems as waste. Those things that are thrown away, garden waste, coffee grounds, ground up eggshells, those things that don't seem to have a purpose anymore. And in many ways, the broader society has esteemed Isla Vista to be such a thing. Something that didn't have much purpose, didn't have much worth. And yet, out of that, out of the alchemy that happened in this place, there have risen up some things that have been world changers. Some things that really have touched way beyond us here. Forgive me for always making analogies, but I kept also thinking of that old Chuck Berry song, "It was a teenage wedding and the old folks wished them well." C'est la vie, say the old folks, it goes to show you never can tell. And about us back then, you wouldn't have said that great things were going to come from here, but c'est la vie, say the old folks. It goes to show you never can tell.
Thank you for that, Father John. Cody.
Thank you. And one thought that I have is I really hope that the folks who were on the ground during the night that the bank burned down and the weeks that followed, I really hope that those people are proud of what they did and they're thinking back fondly of it, because I know up here we're really proud of everything that they accomplished. They brought a spotlight to so many of the challenges and injustices that were facing our community and facing our nation. And they really used that to bring a lot of attention to those issues and create meaningful institutions and change in our communities. So I look back and salute them with everything I have.
Thank you.
It's getting so emotional.
It's an emotional meeting. The last thing I'll just say is that I think it's incredibly fitting that the Isla Vista Community Center occupies the former Bank of America building, not the one that burned down, but the one that the bank left when it moved into the new building where Embarcadero Hall stands now, and is really just a symbol of the continuity that we all have with the past here that we can never lose. It's a part of our blood as a community, and it's part of our blood as a local government agency, and I just think it's really important to recognize those sorts of things. So with that, I wholeheartedly endorse this resolution. I'm going to go public comment to Mark.
Sorry, man. A little bit of like a point of information, but also just like a general appreciation for Isla Vista and everything that this community, using that word, just emphasizing that word, has. A few months ago now, I was in my hometown in Costa Mesa, California, at a local political event, and I found out that the father of my favorite local city council member was roommates with Kevin Moran, who, and also went to UCSB and was there on the day of the bank burning. So I loved that, just that full circle moment of like feeling UCSB outside, or excuse me, feeling Isla Vista and feeling Santa Barbara and feeling UCSB like outside of here and in my hometown, but also if anyone ever wants to like contact that individual, I would, I'd be willing to share or at least figure out the ways to contact him.
So one more small thing. The lines back then were a little confusing. All of us who were there in those times must kind of acknowledge that. And the lines in the years afterwards were a little confusing too. But we must always remember Kevin Moran and Dover Sharp also, the custodian at the faculty club who died. These were not battle deaths, but they were kind of the stuff out of which all of this did grow. And we have to remember those lost along the way. And that is part of our history. It's not just some myth. This is real stuff. There were folks that got hurt along the way.
One of the things I wanted to say after hearing him quote rock and roll is I was very impressed with the clergy that were here at that time. You had the Methodists that were here, Ed Hoffman, Dan Kennedy. You had I forgot Charlie's last name, who was at the Catholic Church at St. Mark's. You had a really impressive group of clergy, and I think that from what I saw when I went down to San Diego at San Diego State, that the clergy who are providing spiritual guidance in college communities are a special group. And I trust and I hope that the clergy that are in Isla Vista right now are of the same quality of the clergy that were here then. And hearing you quote rock and roll gives me a lot of confidence that that's true.
Thank you for that, Dr. Day. Art?
As a second line to the rocket Chuck Berry, I report to you that for the 20th anniversary of the burning of the bank, there was a homecoming queen, and the homecoming queen was a gay man.
That is great. We're gonna have to see if we can bring a similar thing back for the 50th anniversary. But with that, I'll bring it back to the board and leave it open for a motion. Ethan?
I move to approve resolution number 20-5, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Isla Vista Community Services District commemorating 50 years of community building in Isla Vista.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Bertrand, seconded by Hedges. Any other last comments? All right, I'll have Jonathan call the roll.
Slow typer today. Director Brent?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Aye.
Director Nguyen?
Aye.
Director Thurlow?
Aye.
Director Geis?
Aye.
Director Bertrand?
Aye.
Director Hedges?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Well, thank you, everyone. This is a really special day for us, and we appreciate those of you that could be here for this symbolic yet very important recognition. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 4.4. I want to ask Jonathan if he can just start off, or kind of want to take these three items in conjunction and ask Jonathan if you could give us a little bit of update of where we're at on these.
Chair, are we gonna take all three of these together? Because I'm gonna have to abstain on 4.4, so I'd appreciate it if you could take 4.5 and 4.6 ahead.
We're not gonna vote on them together, but I need to talk about 4 first.
Okay. Well, then I'll step out while you talk about it, but I would say this before I step out. I'm assuming we're gonna get the full and complete MOU prior to a vote. Because the one I saw this morning was about 35 pages long. And the one that's in front of us is one page.
I found out only a few hours ago about that.
It's part of the
Yeah.
So
discussion.
that's what I was gonna say is, we
Okay.
can't approve this because there's a
the
new
real
one
one-
that I don't have, that I found out existed just a couple hours ago.
Call me.
Call me.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Basically what George said, so the MOU with UC Santa Barbara started off as a one-pager that they produced, that we reviewed and were okay with, but I didn't know it was 35 pages. I just thought it was like slightly more complex, like a couple extra lines. So I asked Katya when they could get, Dean of Students, when they can get the new one to us, and she's like, when's your next meeting? And I said March 10th, and she said we can get it to you March 10th. I was like, no, we need it March 6th, so just to get on our agenda. So that's our compromise date, is March 6th to have it done. So I don't have anything for you for this one. The other two are ready, but like the sheriff's office one is their best and final offer, and the Lucidity one is, that one's been scrubbed and looked over. That's all final. Like I feel very good about that one. But yeah, we don't have the MOU ready to go. And so one thing Spencer and I discussed before the meeting is, does it make sense to approve the other two without the MOU with UCSB, because they're pretty connected? Or do we wanna get these approved now, because Lucidity also does need to start some work, and waiting another 2 weeks. I haven't discussed that with them, because they didn't have enough time yet today to be able to do that. So the sheriff's office one can wait. That one's not very pressing. I mean, I think they'd rather us approve it today, because one of the points in there is like they want 30-day notice of the event, and like March 10th is less than 30 days before April 4th. But again, this MOU not being ready was really unexpected. And so that's the situation we have. We could do a special meeting if we wanted to ask them to accelerate the MOU, but that, March 4th, I guess, is the 30-day for this. We can try to do one that evening. That could work, but, I don't know if they'd be ready for March 4th, so.
I have
to investigate that.
question about our contract with SBSO. What is the termination clause in case?
The termination
Because
clause.
in terms of, because here's what I'm thinking is that if we need to give them 30 days notice, which I didn't even think about when we were talking about that, then maybe it is better to move forward with these agreements, or at least this one in particular. I just want to make sure that we wouldn't be on the hook to, if for some reason we can't get this agreement worked out with the university.
Yeah, so they have a 30-day termination clause. So that gives us, if we approved it today and I knew by the 4th that it wasn't gonna work out, that gives us some time.
That's not what my
But,
understanding of the termination
yeah.
clause is.
Okay, what's your others?
So it says, should the county fail to provide the customer all or any part of the services, then we may terminate the agreement if the county doesn't remedy within 30 days. It's like a remedy clause. And then notwithstanding any other payment provision, the customer shall pay county for service performed to the date of termination. But so I don't like the county has the ability to terminate upon 30 days written notice, but we don't.
Okay, I mixed that up in my reading just now, but in Exhibit B, there's also 24-hour notice to not do the event, and that will then charge us a minimum of 2 hours per officer if we cancel within 24 hours. So I think we have until 24 hours to not go through with it because they don't want to schedule people. So I think we have some flexibility with this one to not execute it. If there's no event, then there's no need for security.
I mean, that's how I'm understanding it too. It seems like this contract is a relatively standard contract, and I would be surprised if they would want to try to charge us back, even if it fell through. But just wanted to double check on that.
Yeah, and the Lucidity one, I mean, if we approved it, they would start work. And I think they need to start work. I mean, there is barely 30 days left until the event. They've got to design signage and everything. The hitch here is that the main point of the UCSB MOU at this point is the money they're giving us. No other part, I mean, their staff is like helping coordinate some aspects of it, but we're doing that right now without an MOU anyways. And they're just helping coordinate things. The billing's gonna still, go to all us. So and then they're gonna help with registration. That's not terribly complex. Like if we really wanted to do the event still and we couldn't work out the MOU, like we could create a registration system in 30 days. And that's not too hard. So really it's the money that they are talking about giving to us, and that's about $30,000. And so that's the money for the food and the entertainment. So we'd have to figure that out. If they did not work out an MOU with us, we'd have a large component of the event that we were not planning on paying for needing to be paid for. So I think that's the main, gap that we would have if this MOU is not signed, today, which it won't be, is funding for the food. We can throw this event without UCSB's approval, right? Like they're not blessed. They're just wanting to collaborate with us on this. So yeah, it's a tough situation because it all arose in the last couple hours. So I have had not enough time to process.
Okay, I'll go over to Ethan.
Cool. So just to confirm though, as far as the amendments that still need to be made to this MOU and just finalizing it, I get that, but overall you still feel good about UCSB's intent in collaborating to make this happen?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes,
Perfect.
they've, they just shared the new number of they finalized the budget and they're already working
Awesome.
on everything, so they're still working on it. I think it's just lawyer stuff, not personal or interest in the event.
Yeah. Cool, so with that in mind, I do think that you should push for a special meeting by the 4th. And I think the staff would certainly understand that that's a month away from the event, so we want to get that done. Also, having a special meeting on this topic of great interest for the community could be good for community engagement and getting people out to learn more about the event. So I think that would be a good way to go.
I just don't know if they will have it ready because they wanted the 10th, and then I asked for the 6th, and that was okay, we'll try really hard for the 6th.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, I can ask, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay. Any other board discussion on this? Jay?
Just verify board discussion on all of the topics. Mostly I'm just asking because if we're going to close all of the agenda items, George might have something to say on that.
Yeah, I'd want to bring him back in if we were going to talk about the other contracts, but just related to the MOU. I think we're all in agreement, time is of the essence, and we should do everything we possibly can to get that in front of us quickly. It's an unfortunate and unforeseen hiccup in the road. But if we want to close discussion about the MOU, I'm happy to invite George back into the room and we can talk about.
I just want to say really quick, my assumption, and this is just my assumption, is that the reason it's 35 pages is because these bullet points are just going to be expanded, but keep the same point. I think they're not I don't think they're gonna throw us a fast one in terms of what they include. It's just these maybe one sentence statements are not, legally sufficient for them. They're gonna turn a one sentence into 2 paragraphs, but we don't know.
So my thought process is this is like a term sheet, and when you convert a term sheet into a contract, you usually do end up with all of these the random little stereotypical clauses, like the termination clause, severability, counterparts, et cetera. And, and the question would just be whether or not they throw in a relatively standard but weird one of those, for example, indemnification.
Yeah. But I guess what I'll tell you is the last bullet point on here says the CSD accepts full responsibility and liability for Isla Vista Fest 2020. I don't think you can get more more strong than that. So I don't know what they can write. And that's usually where the issue ends up being is liability. So if we're okay with that sentence, whether that sentence is a page longer, the sentence the thought, you're right, it's a term sheet, like this is the outline of what the next contract will look like.
Okay, well then with that, we will be on the lookout for a special meeting to approve an MOU, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I'll invite George back in the room.
I'll do George, because I'm gonna step out for 4.5.
Okay, sounds good.
Someone grab me and text me once you're ready to come back.
I can tell you that.
Okay, so we're gonna move over to 4.5, which is the contract with the sheriff's office. So Jonathan, just to recap, your recommendation to the board is to pass this as is. We aren't left on the hook if for some unforeseen reason it can't be pulled together in time.
Yeah, I say we pass this and we'll work out if, you know, this all falls apart in the next week and a half, which I don't think it will. We can work with them to not execute this, but I think out of, you know, our relationship with them, we've discussed this as it is, it's, you know, it's good. It's their, and it's their final offer. Yeah, I mean, there are some not ideal parts of it, like the liability of whatever the officers do totally falls on us. Hopefully nothing terrible happens, but if something terrible happened, if someone sued and was unhappy with an officer's performance, even though we have no control over their training or how they do their duties, we're on the hook. But that's also the kind of contract with any entity who contracts with the sheriff's office for law enforcement services. So Lucidity, when they do their festival at Live Oak and they get this contract, they have the same thing, and everybody else. So that's what they told me, and we weren't happy with it, but that's something that if we wanted to do this event, I'm gonna say we'd have to live with that and be okay with that.
Go over to Jay.
A question on that, when you say we weren't happy with that, I remember not being that happy with it. But then I remember our lawyer saying that we didn't need to be that concerned about that clause due to some really quirky aspect of how public law works.
Yeah,
Ross, I remember that too.
Ross wasn't happy,
that's
what he
Ross
said.
also
I mean,
wasn't
he said like, it's not ideal,
Okay.
but we can live with it. Like, he's like, you know, this is the point, this is the problem with it, same, you know, as you identified, but if we need to do this, that's, you know, it's okay to accept.
Cool. Well, the thing that I came around to is that we don't have any leverage to negotiate that because the sheriff is the decider on what events get to happen and what events don't get to happen. And we need public safety personnel at the event. So I think it is one of those things that's not ideal, but we'll have to live with, and I'm confident that we can avoid situations like that because Lucidity is used to working with our law enforcement agencies and keeping events orderly. Any other board discussion on this? Any public comment on this item?
I have one. Is there a reason why you're contracting with the sheriff's department versus considering the university police department?
That's what everybody was saying we should do. So Chief Brock and everybody said this is sheriff, you know, something you work with the sheriff's to do, so.
Oh, they directly.
We had a meeting with all law enforcement representatives on this, and the chief was cool with it.
Oh.
Good
I
question.
think UCSB is incredibly concerned about its liability. And this just would add another layer to it.
Okay. Back at the board, I'd entertain a motion to adopt this agreement. If anyone has one.
We're now on
4.5 contract with the sheriffs.
And we're doing a special meeting for the other agreement?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We
Okay.
don't know when we
Alright.
get the contract.
I think in the case of the county and Lucidity, the faster we get these contracts executed, it lets them go through their own stuff, because I need to see the sheriff's gotta sign this, and risk management, and so the more pieces of this puzzle that we don't have laying out there, all jamming up against some date out in the future, I think we should take the risk and get it done.
You know what, I'm gonna move approval of the contract with December with the County Sheriff's Office.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is made by Freeman and seconded by Geis. Is there any public comment? Any further board discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0 with one abstention. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm counting, I'm sorry.
That's okay. 6-0 with one abstention. Okay. Can someone go and get Ethan? Thanks, Mark.
Jason, prepared to argue whether it's 6 or 7. You decide what argument.
Okay. So with that, we also have our agreement for professional services with Lucidity. Can give a little bit of an overview of this and where we're at with it.
Yes, give me one quick second to type this out. Alright, so the Lucidity contract is pretty fleshed out at this point. It outlines, it's a standard professional services agreement that we use with everybody we do business with. So the contract is nothing to talk much over, but the real points are the cost of this, which is $48,000, and that the not to exceed if there's growth in costs is $2,403. We have a budget as exhibit 2 is the budget, and the scope of services is exhibit 1. You can see where the budget breaks down. There's the lead coordinators, the structures, the guardians, the stage, the site operations, the media, capturing the day's events, then consulting services, incidentals, and administrative. Adds up to $48,000. The way we pay for it is, I have good news. I didn't mention it yet. Yeah, save good news for that. So $48,000 is the cost of the contract. Well, we have $9,000 approximately rough for security in here that we can take out of our community policing fund. The $3,000 for the law enforcement costs, which is also with you, also can go out of that community policing budget. Then we have a $30,000 new program development fund, and that's where we can pay for most of this. And then Santa Barbara City College Foundation is putting in at least $5,000, possibly $10,000, and that'll cover the rest of the cost. So our new program budget plus a community policing budget plus the contribution from City College Foundation.
Go over to Jay.
And that's under an assumption that UCSB is not putting any money?
These are all the costs that we're responsible for.
Right,
So,
I'm just verifying, like, that's under an assumption that UCSB happens to somehow not put any money, but that we also.
No, this is like our half of the budget, because this is not including the cost of food and games. So that's what UCSB's budget is paying for, and so we don't really need to include that in the calculation of how we pay for it, because it's money in, money out. They'll give us $30,000, we'll spend $30,000, but the math I just said to you was for.
So we are additionally paying over $30,000.
There'll be another $30,000 we expense, but that's part of the MOU with UCSB.
Right. Okay,
That's, no,
minus
it's
UCSB.
additional 30,000 in income.
Yeah, the 30,000 is its own budget, so it's the food
Yeah,
cost.
but in addition to whatever UCSB is doing,
Yeah,
we are paying.
48,000
but then it's minus 5,000
from City College Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Over 40,000, okay.
Over $40,000. Yeah, $38,000 to $43,000.
And does the university's contribution stay within their own budgetary contributions, or are they gonna give it to us and then we gotta re-budget it and we're paying the bills?
The second one.
Second one, okay.
Is this what you presented before? Because I don't remember there being this much of a cost associated with this.
Yeah, at the last meeting, I actually said it was gonna cost $55,000, and it's,
Somehow I was under the impression that most of that money was coming from the university.
No, I was saying that the 55 was our piece, and then the university was another piece. So this is what we had reported last time. the rough cost. It went up by $6,000 for site operations, and that's the cost of the fencing, pretty much, mainly, so.
So can I just have, on our long-term vision, so let's say we're successful with this and the party's successful and we figure, hey, it could grow a little bit, it could be, how many people can we stuff in the park, maybe 4,000 or something? Do we have any vision about, well, how would we do this festival in the future and actually break even? Or make it a community fundraising event that, you know, creates some money to do other wonderful things in the community by, have we thought, I guess, I don't know if Lucidity's thought that far ahead or we've thought that far ahead?
It was more part of a discussion back in the fall when we were thinking of the bigger event
Yeah.
and getting sponsorships and everything
Oh,
for it.
okay, yeah.
So, but then what we ended up coming to is we need to invest in the pilot so that we
Yeah.
can prove it works, so that we can get the sponsorships. And so that's what the video, you can assume this $2,000 for the video is a development cost, because we'd show that video to sponsors in the future and say, you should get on board with this, because look the good we did on this day by, you know, having this safe festival.
And let's say we did get a year out, and we did have a safe festival this year, but I guess we'd save that for a future. Are we always gonna subsidize a festival like this because it's great for the community? And that would be okay with me if that's the case, you know?
Yeah.
But I just didn't know how to get from point A to point B to raise $100,000 every time to run a festival without a big, you know, like 20,000 people that bought a ticket over there into the stadium.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would recommend off the top of my head right now is if we do it on April 4th, that's, you know, in the beginning of our budget process.
yeah.
We could even put into our budget anticipated sponsorship revenue, and that's how we start planning the structure for it. Is we say, we'll bring in 60 from sponsorships, it'll cost this much next year, and we'll start building it out that way.
I think that that's a great idea. Go ahead, Ethan.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the line items in the guardianship, or guardian team budget right now on pages 25 through 28. And I see a few revisions to be made. Line items 9 and 10 both speak to maintain safety and security of beer garden zone. Since we don't have the beer garden anymore, those should probably be taken out. Additionally, line items 13 and 14 are related to maintain safety, security of IV food co-op and open mic. Is that still something that's part of this?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Thanks for catching that.
Yeah, so that'll be about $900 saved.
Yeah, and I will, I'll ask them if they intentionally left that, those people in, meant for still the festival, or if it's a typo.
Sure.
Yeah, because maybe they still need those folks for the actual operation, maybe not, because this is their scaled down version of it. We asked them to trim it down, it was way bigger than this originally, so.
Yeah, that my recollection is that they were recommending, I think, 55 total or something in that ballpark personnel for when we had the proposal back in the fall.
Yeah,
So
this
it
the
is
reduced one.
it is scaled, but that is a mistake that needs to be corrected.
Yeah. Great, yeah, I'll work on that. We can just do the motion, you know, a way to give me the ability to negotiate that before we sign it.
Okay. George?
Quick question and a comment, maybe you already covered this if you did.
Yeah.
The bathrooms?
Oh, yes, Associated Students is doing the bathrooms.
What's
Yes.
that?
Associated Students, they're handling the.
You better double check that.
What?
Would just double check.
Okay, I was told twice, confirmed that they were, but I will double check that.
Yeah, and, so, is there a contingency built into this, Lucidity? What's gonna happen when they come back and say this costs a lot more than we anticipated?
The maximum contingency is $2,400.
Okay.
That
So
they're
I would-
allowed to grow.
I would
costs.
just say that I don't know how much flex you have, but $2,000 for paintings seems like it could be a contingency fund. $2,000 for artwork, page
Yeah.
14. I'm just thinking as if there's an unanticipated or.
Oh, like, let's not do that, and,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, we have that
Okay.
flexibility.
Do you have that kind of flexibility?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions from the board? Jay?
I guess I just fundamentally misunderstood the setup conversations for this. So what I've been very excited about was the idea that there was a project that was now coming at us that UCSB was funding, at least most of, if not even almost all of, that then was going to just be like, we were gonna be funding the security, was my understanding, not $12,000 worth of structures that are gonna be put together and then apparently dismantled. I mean, even just $3,000 just to put together bamboo stage and then just destroy it, which is weird. And then, I mean, like, I look at this, when you combine this with the security, particularly with the contingency, you're looking at something on the order of like 5 times the community garden project that we just saw presented. And that's something that like is a trade-off that we're making this year, deciding that we are not going to do 5 projects like that in order to do this party. And I appreciate, I mean, again, I have for years talked about the idea of trying to spend money on events in order to figure out how to mitigate the cost that the sheriff's department keeps throwing on the community, coming out of the county's budget. They could be applying towards other things, but when you look at the shell game of money then, of that we're spending the money in order to save the county the money there, well, I mean, it's like when the county saves those millions of dollars, are they gonna come back and hand those millions of dollars to us in order to benefit the community? I don't think that's really how it works. And so that's why I'm constantly trying, like, I constantly push on the idea that we need to be doing this by getting partners involved in the different aspects of the community, spreading the costs among everybody in order to make, because we're all in this together as a process of, and it's great that the university is funding some of the activity, but if we're funding even most of it, the cost, I appreciate that. I mean, I'll certainly get voted down on it, but I guess I'm against it, but that's okay.
I think that one of the things that I would point out to the board is that there is money that we all agreed to set aside in the budget for program development. And I don't think we're gonna get a better opportunity to develop a program that could be sustainable into the future than we are now. That's where the majority of the revenue that will pay for this is coming from. And the same thing, I think, can be said for the community policing fund, which I would remind the board I didn't even draw from last year. And so I think that aside from the revenue aspect of it, it's important for us to remember that I think there's a higher and better and good than just the shell game of who's responsible and the politicking of safety, and that higher and better good is safety itself. And I think that Jonathan described it as sort of as a pilot. I would describe it as a proof of concept for what we can do when we invest in ways of trying to get safety in our community through harm reduction and fun. And so I'm definitely supportive of the general direction that we have in this proposal. I think that we have exceeded the community desire for us to scale down the original proposal that we had and that we have heard on multiple occasions. And I think that was a really good decision that we made to scale it down. And I'm happy with where we're headed, because my motto with this has always been let's undersell and overperform. And I think that that's exactly where we're headed with this.
Can I also, let me just throw in a pitch. A big chunk of money that the university is going to spend on this, which is actually a flow-through, is going to go to local businesses in terms of all the food is going to be bought in Isla Vista. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I think they wanted to do maybe some of their concessions food too, but the vast majority of the 30,000 is for local businesses.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is also a big economic development boost. And also, I don't know, the policing that you referenced, policing fund, is that university money?
No, the community policing fund is something we constructed in our budget, out of our UUT revenue.
Okay. Is that the shell game that we were all referencing?
The what?
Nothing.
Okay, Ethan?
Thank you. So I'll say I'm supportive of this, though I do share a lot of Jay's concerns about, before this meeting, I was under the impression that a lot of, at least part of the UCSB money was going towards some of this work done by Lucidity. So I'm having a little bit of sticker shock seeing that we're paying for the entire 48,000, and I wish I understood that before, but I am supportive of this.
Christy?
I was wondering if prices are negotiable, like the large hand-painted environmental signage, like $2,000 for that, if the prices are negotiable, because I don't think that that's $2,000 for 3 paintings.
I don't think the prices are negotiable, but we can cut things out. So, but, you know, I just need direction on what you want me to cut.
So I think what I'm hearing from the board is that we would like to have this come back both with the corrections that Ethan noted for the Guardian staffing, maybe also with a little bit slimmer budget for some of those things that are a little bit more, shall we put it, non-essentials. And I think that there may be room for us to be able to do that. Go ahead, George.
Well, I want to follow up on what Bob said. We don't have any time left. This thing's going to start to unravel and fall apart, and the various players are going to start pulling out. And so I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and approve this in concept, and that we sign this agreement with the understanding that there will be cleanup. A cleanup item comes back to us at the next meeting, but then in fact we authorize this.
All right, there's been a motion made by Thurlow. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded by Geis. Okay, any public comment on that motion? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
I just think, you know, we're taking a risk to try and move this event back into IB and make it successful. But everything we do as a board, any of the new programs that we start up are a risk. And we could fall on our face. We gotta be ready to fall on our face because at some point we may have to discard what we tried to do. But I think we as a board did a lot of due diligence in trying to vet this before the community, try and make it happen, and I think I'm ready to support the risk, even though there's a lot of risk there. Something could happen really big at that party and it could destroy the district. I mean, there's that much risk if, you know, something really bad happened. But on the other hand, the risk is what Jay points out is we live with this police state of the sheriff putting all these resources in here, UCSB having to react that way and bring in all their resources on mutual aid, and the community looks like it's failing. You know, the outside looks at it and go, look at all the money they spent there and all the kids they took to the, you know, the hospital or the drunk tank or whatever. So I think it's worth the risk, and I think we should give Lucidity clear direction of what we want to do in this agreement, and I think it's pretty well there, and go for it.
All right. Jay?
Is part of the premise here that maybe there's also like a follow-on to not Bob, what Bob just said, sort of, but what Bob had said earlier, the thing about trying to come up with like recurring in the future, how we look at it in order to get, try to make it more break even, is that if look, we took the risk and threw down a ton of money on it last year. It worked. This year, other people should pay for it, like we're saying this next year. Is that the thing that we would be willing to push for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sponsors, I mean, I think it was said best that when we were discussing the first iteration of this, there was a lot of talk about sponsors and the desire that they would have to get their name on an event like this.
I'm looking at the people who are currently spending all the money on the security, which is like the university and the county, because I would expect that if out of the millions of dollars that are getting spent on policing in Isla Vista, that they should consider, if this works, that we should be able to pass all the cost to them, and I would love to push them on that hard next year if this works. Is that where we're thinking? Are other people thinking that way, or is it just me?
I think there's a really strong argument for that, and I think that having the proof of concept will be able to open up new doors for us that we haven't been able to thus far. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about the documentary and the fact that we'll be able to tell our own story of what happened, because one of the things. So,
you got me. The last thing I think about doing this is a smaller size version of this, but it is, you know, doing an event in Isla Vista that's sanctioned. And, you know, it brings up, can we do First Fridays over here in the community center? I don't know how the jazz concert worked the other day, but, you know, you look at there and you go, boy, that could First Friday could be a money-making adventure for the community, you know, to make improvements. And so I think this is just part of that, you know, do we bring Lucidity in for those First Fridays? You know, does it work? And so I think there's a lot more to this that we should say, why are we taking the risk? And we're trying to take the risk to make the community better.
Father John.
I'm really captured by the notion of proof of concept. This isn't one of those things that can be understood entirely in terms of investment and return. I think there's something at work that's much beyond this. It is something that could be scalable up, and I think that if the concept is proven, which for some odd reason I am convinced that it will be proven. For some odd reason I'm convinced that this party somehow is one of those things that's going to be a step toward maturity in this community. It's going to show that we can do something like this and have it not flop on its face. And I think in that sense, I think that the reward to the risk ratio here is pretty strong, and I would be willing to make the investment. That's my 2 cents.
Any other comments from members of the board? Ethan?
Cool. Well, I'm glad that we're able to take action on this tonight. This has been something we've worked on for a long time, so thank you to Spencer and Jonathan for continuing, and Deborah for continuing to push this forward. I'm excited for us to offer something that's really a great experience for the community on Deltopia. I can imagine so many people when they're taking a break from Del Playa and just going to all the businesses on the loop and seeing this event, going, oh, what's that? And walking over, in addition to all the folks that we notify before the event. I know our interns are doing a great job with putting together the entertainment, and I really look forward to this event.
Thank you. I think the last thing that I would say before I call the question is that there's a lot of problems that we deal with in Isla Vista on a regular basis that have always felt to me like the solution lies somewhere in expanding our realm of possibility for how we could solve those problems, instead of just trying to repeat the same thing over and over again and thinking, you know, if we just had a little bit more of this, it would work. We had a little bit more of that. Really, this is about trying to bring transformative change to a day that is both revered by the community, but we clearly see the negative ramifications of, whether it's the violence that we've seen in the past, whether it's the police state-like precedents that makes our community members feel uncomfortable and unsafe rather than more safe, whether it is the hospitalizations and other medical issues that happen as a result of the event really being centered just around alcohol. And I think that this is a big step in the direction of trying to spur on that transformative change. And I'm really proud of our board for sticking with this, for listening to the community throughout the entire process, and coming up with something that I think is not only amenable and a great compromise in the true spirit of compromises with everyone who has a stake in this, but also something that I think is going to be really fun and people are going to enjoy. So thank you all for that. With that, I will go ahead and call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. Thanks, everyone. So with that, we will look forward to a special meeting, or possibly not. We will look forward to getting word that the MOU is on the table and ready for us to hear. Okay, we're going to go to item 5, reports. We'll start with members of the board. Any members of the reports? Jake?
So tomorrow morning, a few of us are having a meeting with people from LAFCA in order to begin a conversation on how that agenda item is going to end up working and what will end up happening. There is a Goleta Valley Library Advisory Commission meeting on Monday where we will supposedly have an agenda item specifically on library services in Isla Vista. I have not actually seen that agenda get sent yet, but I was assured at the meeting that it would be a separate agenda item specifically on that topic. So anyone would like to talk about library services in Isla Vista can come join at that meeting. There was a 3rd District Supervisor Candidate Forum held here, which I did audio recording for KCSB, helped with the Daily Nexus recording, and did some recording myself, and so I got that video up a couple of hours ago. If people would like to watch that and haven't seen it yet. There was the workshop that I mentioned at our last meeting with the people who were talking about the tax process with the carbon tax, but the workshop locally in order to try to construct carbon neutral Isla Vista. I attended that along with Jonathan, and there was a lot of interesting ideas, and I think actually a lot of great looking at how to actually make it happen, which was somewhat exciting to actually see, particularly then with the involvement of Mo Lovegreen, who's the head of campus sustainability. And so they, my understanding, will be asking during our budget cycle for potential like an internship option or something like that. I went and this morning I stopped, this is something that actually has been a discussion that has been happening, just ran a side discussion with Ethan about the idea that we have these cars in the area that are doing Zipcar. And so actually I stopped at the Zipcar head office in San Francisco earlier today in order to get contact with their public partnership specialist. Ethan doesn't actually know about that yet. So we can now have meetings with them in order to, that's something that I'm just kind of bringing up this idea as something that might end up coming through, bringing to staff at some point, but just so people know stuff's happening. For relating to having more electric zip cars in the area. Awkwardly, and actually double underscore on awkwardly, I think I'm part of the Solvang State of the City on Friday. They're doing breakout sessions with industry leaders, and I am going to be doing a talk on the applications and trade-offs involved in smart cities. And so one of the council members there has been talking to me constantly about it, and we'll see if somehow I show up and that doesn't happen. But one of the council members is just adamant, and I've seen in the articles about it in the Santa Maria Times that there's that there are these breakout sessions, but I don't know. We'll see what weirdly happens. And something I've noticed as I've been going through and doing wireless surveys here is that the county has stopped running their Wi-Fi here and has now got the Ivy Youth Project set up with their own Wi-Fi. So the county has started a service withdrawal from the building, which I think is a good sign from the idea that they might be handing us the building. So I was happy to see that they seem to be making little steps there.
Thank you, Jay. Go to Ethan.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to hear about your discussion or your meeting with someone from Zipcar. I actually just finished writing a paper for a class called Energy Politics that I'm in, and we were tasked with writing a policy memo on really anything. And I finally put the idea I spoke to you about in writing in a memo to President Brandt. So I'll share that with you all soon. Just talking about how we as the Isla Vista Community Services District could take the lead in bringing an electric vehicle car share program to IV. It seems like an excellent place for it. There's been some other campus communities that have done it. And there's also right now a lot of state funding, especially through state cap and trade funds and California climate investments for doing innovative programs to bring alternative transportation to low-income communities. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Look forward to continuing to work with you on that. I'll additionally mention that a number of us went to the jazz concert at the community center. It was very well attended. The audio was a lot better than at least I expected. I think probably some other members could attest to that too. There were a good amount of folks in the room, so I think that definitely helped with the sound. And also the side door was open, and I was a little bit nervous about that because it was a winter night, but the temperature was great in the room because there were a lot of people there. So overall, an awesome event. Congratulations to everyone who worked to put it on.
Thank you, Ethan. Any other reports from the board? Okay, we'll give mine. Now mentioned the Jeffrey's Jazz Coffeehouse, which was probably my favorite thing that's happened in the last 2 weeks. It was just incredible to see the community center come alive, see live music in it. That's really been something that's a part of my vision for that space, and I think one of the best uses that we can possibly come up with for that space, drawing people in on Friday and Saturday nights to share dancing, music, good times, and so it was really incredible to see, and I echo the thanks to everyone who is involved in putting that on.
What'd they do for seating? Did they have seating?
They had rented seats, I believe.
They did?
Yeah, that's right. And they still had like an area for dancing. They had some tables as well. So.
Oh, cool.
Jonathan has mentioned that he met with Jeff Green, had a really positive meeting with him and Dean of Students Katya Armistead about SBCC's contribution towards the I'm not going to call it Deltopian anymore, to our festival, our spring festival, and got a really positive reception from him. He, as many of you know, Isla Vista alum, so I think he understands what we're trying to do really well, and was very supportive of that initiative. As the chair of the Community Center Advisory Board, just wanted to give an update on that meeting and how it went. The main topic of discussion at this last meeting was about the flooring and about what it is the advisory board wanted to see. I think that while there was no strong decisions made or strong desires expressed, there was the idea that maybe we do something akin to a split floor, similar to what we have in here, where half of the room is one type of, I believe that's the vinyl, Deborah can correct me if I'm wrong, and then the other half here we have the carpet tiles. And so it just goes to show that there are different ways that we can configure that space by what sort of flooring we put in. But the main takeaway that I had is that there's a consensus forming that we need to make sure that whatever the floor is that we put in, we have it set up in a way that is conducive for all manners of exercise, which I think that our board agrees with as well. We need to have it available for dancing and yoga and all that good stuff, because if we don't, then we're going to miss out on a big sector of the potential programming that I think is some of the most desired by the community. And so Deborah gave a good presentation, was able to show the board different samples of different types of flooring and the estimates that we got back. So I think it was a good discussion. We also gave them an update on the CDBG grant and the status of that. And I think there's the desire from the board and the community center staff to try and make sure that those renovations work with their timeline, preferably over the summer, which is something we've spoken about too. I think that's all I've got for my report. We'll move on to committee reports. Actually, one more thing that I did want to mention just for the whole board is that I have spoken to staff to ask them to propose to the policy committee a new policy regarding committee attendance and the use of proxies or alternates. I think that particularly when we have a very big community center advisory board, that that is something that could be beneficial, especially since a couple of our positions that are on that board are sort of ex officio-ish or in intention. And so it's something that I would just throw out there as an idea that I think could make things operate a little bit more smoothly, because it is a Brown Act body, and so we were under some time constraints because of the potential of not meeting quorum during that meeting. And I think that that's just something that we just are gonna have to deal with, so.
You had a problem getting a quorum at your last advisory board meeting?
Yeah, that's right.
I've noticed that on some of the big boards at the county where they get the board too big, that like the air pollution control district, and they don't give them a stipend to come, and they always have difficulty getting a quorum, and they can't even, in my day, they had a hard time passing budget amendments. SBK gets a good following because it's a lot bigger entity with a lot more responsibilities and sharing of revenue, so everybody has a greater interest to be there. So it's.
And there's some tricks you can do, maybe ask Ross, because, not tricks, but there's certain things you can do to create quorums, which is you have certain people who, like, who can come to these meetings if there's a concern about a quorum.
Yeah, we'll work on that. Maybe an alternate system, or?
That's
We
sort of
talked
what
about
Deborah and I had
establishing
talked about.
some form of proxy.
Yes.
The proxies are just not, well,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into discussion,
Yeah.
but proxies are problematic from the point of view is you have to re-educate people
And they have to be present, informed.
versus alternates.
Yeah.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah, we'll look into it. Good idea.
Okay, so with that, other reports from committees? Policy have anything to report on? Okay, we'll go to report from district council.
Nothing to report, Ross is very busy.
Yes, it sounds like
Yeah.
getting those bounce back emails.
Yeah, he's on auto reply emails right now.
We wish him well. Go ahead, report from general manager.
A lot of the time the last 2 weeks was finalizing the 3 Deltopia items we had today, but one other thing that I did do relating to the planning of the festival is we met with the fire department, or the fire district, to do a walkthrough of the space, and they're pretty much okay with whatever. They just said make sure you have 2 emergency exits, so we're good to go there. I did meet with the Cool Block people who are looking to do the carbon neutral idea separately as well, with Carl Palmer, who is our former consultant on the community center implementation, so that was productive. And me and Deborah had coffee with the new general manager of the IV Rec and Park District today, and she's amazing, so really looking forward to having her as someone we work with on a regular basis. And one good news is the 34 lights are now finalized and actually installed. We got the email confirmation that there's no more shortage, or, you know, the shortage ended, they got installed, we have the 34 in, so we can now finally move on.
Can
to
you
the
send
next.
out a press release on that?
We can do that, yeah. No, good idea, good idea. We'll have to get it approved by the county, obviously.
They'll just move them to the front.
Yeah, yeah. What can we do?
All right, great. Well, thank you for that, Jonathan. And I think we're all very excited about the additional lights. I know I certainly am. Okay, unless there's anything else, our next meeting is gonna take place on March 10th. It's our next regular meeting, 6 PM, same time, same place. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, I heard move Thurlow. Second Freeman. Any public comment or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Pretty quick one, actually. I thought it was gonna be a little.
I was gonna tell you that. Like someone called you.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been?
better, actually. Yeah.
I saw it pop up.
I did to Kate.
But yeah, thanks.
And, it's still a little shaky, but, I'm so over that.
Well,
first question. I mean, I just, I'm looking at
Or is that like just totally exist,
I've got to get back.
for like maintaining or whatnot?
I feel like we should work towards that for next year because I just worry that changing things last minute is going to just cause delays. But in the future, that's a really good way to get people to good ideas.
What else?
George.
Like less money.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm not ready to do anything, so I've got a couple of